let's go check out IPCinfo.org. So this is what we have here. We got the integrated food security phase classification. This is the most official group in the world. Works with the United Nations, international governments, I believe NGOs. There's some NGOs that work with this, and I think academia might be involved as well. But it's a multi-tiered approach to classifying food conditions around the world in an effort to get a fair assessment, right? So as you can see, it was cycling through some of the other different situations around the world that they've dealt with. Yemen, of course, and tons of famine in Africa that I'm sure we're all familiar with. Sudan, Rwanda. So the difference between those situations and Gaza is that this was a completely man-made famine. History making, record breaking. Never before in our sick world can we say that a famine was 100% completely man-made. And this one we can. So really quick, man, you guys can take a look at this site yourself. It's really straightforward. I want to look at the fact sheet. There we go. So let's go. We'll go here first. Oh, this is the whole paper. Yeah. So I urge you guys to go read this. I'm not going to go over this right now. I'm going to go back and go over the fact sheet with you to keep this brief. So let's take a look at this. Common drivers of famine and extreme food crisis. Conflict often leads to population displacement. I'm on the top right here if you can't see. Conflict often leads to population displacement and disrupts traditional methods of addressing food scarcity, as well as the delivery of humanitarian assistance. Right? So conflict affects things. Weather extremes such as drought, flooding, cyclones affect food availability and access, and economic shocks greatly impact access to food through disruptions of food trade, food price, inflation, and currency volatilities. So we can certainly add a new category or two or three to those, right? Again, this situation is 100% under, the conflict out of those three, but more than just conflict and a famine being some type of result, haphazard result, consequence of this conflict. It's nowhere near that. This is a completely man-made and imposed famine. The people in Gaza have existed in a 365 square kilometer open air concentration camp. It's the largest open air prison in the world. Okay, pause, move on here. How's famine measured? Okay, check this out. It's the highest phase of the IPC acute food insecurity scale and is classified when an area has 20% of households facing an extreme food shortage. Okay, pause there. That statistic, and this is what I mean by this, that this situation in Gaza is so different. So these are the threshold requirements, right? To look at them under this light is almost disrespectful to the Palestinian people and like what they've gone through in these conditions and what they're dealing with to this day and to right now. The threshold is 20% of households facing extreme food shortage. So within their open air prison that they live in, I'm not sure that there's 20% of households that are still standing. Nearly 90% of the square mileage of the Strip has been turned into rubble and has been deemed a shoot-to-kill zone. So people have been displaced out of 90% of the square mileage. Relax, buddy. And that's what makes this situation with the IOF, Israeli Occupation Force, going into Gaza City so tragic, is because you have to understand what's happening here is like the majority of who's still alive in Palestine, the living population, has been corralled and herded into two areas, essentially Gaza City, and there's an area down strip along the beach, about halfway of the strip, up the strip, and I don't have the name. Okay, so like 20% of households facing extreme food shortage. How can you even quantify the situation in Gaza in any type of relatable terms to that? Of course, 20% of how they don't even have households. 30% of children acutely malnourished. I'm not even sure what the malnourished requirement is, right? What does it take to be malnourished? But these people, um, they're not eating, they're being starved. Day by day, people are just dying from lack of food. Malnourishment is almost like a disrespectful term, if you can't put your finger on why I'm having a hard time putting words together or like getting my thoughts out, right? Because they are so far above and beyond 30% of children being acutely malnourished that this clearly should have been done a long time ago, right? 2 or 4 deaths, non-trauma deaths for every 10,000 each day due to outright starvation or to the interaction of malnutrition and disease. So to classify this as a famine, it's requiring that 2 adults or 4 children for every 10,000. So you got, times 10, 20, 40 for every 100,000, times another 10, 200, 400 for every million. Yeah, I think, I don't know what the deaths are due to starvation. I hope to God that, I think at this point you might have people dying in that. Non-trauma deaths for every 10,000 each day due to outright starvation. That seems out of place, in my opinion, to tell you the truth. 2 to 4, that's a lot. I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot of people dying before you want to do something. Boy. So we got the different phases. Phase 1, none. Phase 2, stressed. Phase 3, a crisis. Phase 4, emergency. Phase 5, famine. Let's just go to like phase 3. Households either have food consumption gaps that are reflected by high or above usual acute malnutrition, or are marginally able to meet minimum food needs, but only by depleting essential livelihood assets or through crisis coping strategies. So you're struggling to get it together. You might have to sell some of your stuff to get some food. It's not a normal situation. Yeah, and then we'll go to phase 4. Households either have food consumption gaps which are reflected in very high acute malnutrition and excess mortality, or are able to mitigate large food consumption gaps, but only by employing emergency livelihood strategies and asset liquidation. So you're tapping into food you had saved up, or you're selling stuff to get food, or you can't even get it. And with phase 5, famine, households experience an extreme lack of food and or cannot meet other basic needs, even after full employment of coping strategies. Starvation, death, destitution, and extremely critical acute malnutrition levels are evident. For famine classification, area needs to have extreme critical levels of acute malnutrition and mortality. So Gaza clearly meets that requirement. I just wrote an article about the GHF, the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and do read that article, do check that out. Essentially, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has turned into shooting fish in a barrel, essentially, a war crime in of itself. And what it's doing is it's gathering destitute people that, just like this says, after full employment of their coping strategies, after doing everything they can, they still have no food. And they still line up to go to what they already know is a death trap to try to get food, even though they know people are getting killed deliberately at these sites that are run by the GHF, and that there's a large likelihood they will come away from it empty-handed. It's hard to even get your hands on the stuff even if you manage to go there, go through the corrals, and get close. It's inhumane and it's despicable. Yo, check out this fact sheet. Check out the website. I think that's enough for now. Prayers out for everybody in Gaza. Free Palestine. And what's the other thing we want to look at here? Wanted to talk about the IPC in that video. Oh yeah, I want to talk about the genocide declaration with Newsweek. Or I read a Newsweek article about it, and that's what I was going to share. Let me see. So this is crazy now. Let me just state one thing real quick, is that they can't censor you from typing genocide Israel. It's not. I never paid attention to that, and that's why I'm shadow banned everywhere. Anyway, but like, this is front page mainstream news now, so like, that's a big deal just in of itself, you know. We can go in the tab bar and just say genocide Israel. Boom. Israel committing genocide in Gaza. World's leading experts say. Genocide scholar says group pushed through Israel condemnation without debate. Oh, that's the Times of Israel. Good God. They're disgusting. Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, scholar.